G'day, Bomber fans. Well, the biggest day in the home and away calendar has come and gone. ANZAC Day is done, and the Pies have gotten a big win over the Bombers. They have owned the day for, I guess, since it's begun, really, and they get their 18th ANZAC Day win. The margin isn't great, 41 points on such a big day. But I think if you watch the game, there's plenty to take away from it. So, overall feeling is not great. You never like losing. But in a few ways, I do feel a bit better coming out of the game as well, having seen it. So, very interesting one. Let's get into it. Remember to leave your votes down in the comments below, the role player attached as always. Okay, well the rain came early before the bounce. We were guessing whether it would come at all. We had the weather gurus out on Twitter, but it started early, and I reckon the Pies were the quicker team to adapt to it. They really got control of the match early. The crowd was up and about with a huge Nick Dacos goal. That guy is too good at footy. Tim Membry got another just a minute or two later, and you started thinking this was going to be a long day at the office. Even Peter Wright getting us back within a goal, I think, at one stage, it still looked like the Pies were going to, annihilate us. It was Collingwood's game to lose. They were kicking us in it through inaccuracy. 20-7, that is not at all an indication of where the teams are at. I thought the Pies were a good 5 or so goals better than us. The second, and again, the Pies were off early. Elliott got his scoring boots on, which you never like to see. Membry again popped up for a major. They had kicked 5 before we managed 2. They were dominating territory, playing really slick footy. It looked like they were in the dry and we were in the wet. And then out of nowhere, we just go bang. There is this major reversal in vibe. We kicked 4 goals in a row. Durham had 2 of them. It was incredible. It was electrifying footy. The crowd was going crazy. For the first time all year, it felt like we were genuinely really exciting. We've played some good footy in patches and looked all right at times. We haven't been boring, but I think that little period in the second when we clawed back into the game, that was big. That felt really significant at the time, and we were in that game at halftime, only down by 8 points. The momentum continued from there, and this was even more fun than that second because the kids were getting up and about. You had Caddy who nailed a goal. His mate Kako slotted one through just a couple of minutes later. We had play going our way. We were playing good footy again, and then mistakes began to creep in, and more importantly, the Pies made us pay for those mistakes. Credit to them. I think that third quarter killed us. The second half of it, I don't even think we were that bad. I just thought the Pies were killing us after each mistake we made. It was so deflating to watch, and we just weren't good enough to do the same as them. We trailed by 4 goals at the final break. The fourth quarter, we got a couple of goals early in the last. Caddy got us back to within 18 points. I believe we had it locked in our 50 at one stage, got a behind or 2 as well, so we were looking in the game. But then about halfway through, the Pies just took over. They done well to stop our scoring, and then they opened the floodgates, kicked 4 late. They brought the margin out to 41 points. And let me tell you, I think we were lucky to be in it as much as we were at quarter time. But I think if you asked Collingwood fans, they would say that margin flatters them. Collingwood were very good, but I didn't think we were 41 points down bad. I think 4 or 5 goals, not 7. But yeah, let's talk about this game because there's plenty of good and plenty of bad, and we're going to start with the bad to end on a high. All right, well, I thought the midfield battle was just theirs. Steele Sidebottom and Nick Dacos were playing with their own footy. They had 26 clearances from between them, just those two, which is just 8 less than Essendon as a team. The Pies were plus 14 in clearances, plus 16 in inside 50s. They had territory in the wet, which is very important. It did look pretty bad at times, the way they were winning it out of the middle, and just the inability of Essendon to defend certain players. I think we've got enough defensive midfield presence to be reducing the impact of Nick Dacos and Steele Sidebottom, or even just one of them. I know some are going to say it's hard to minimise, so much damage from one without letting the other have more of a say elsewhere, but I think those 2 guys were doing too much out of the midfield. They were attacking quite a bit out of the midfield, and then Collingwood as a team was setting up really well after clearances to force front half turnovers. And the annoying thing is, I don't even think it was really just the midfielders. I think you had to stop Sidebottom and Dacos getting that early territory. But then around the ground, there were guys all over the field just running rampant. You had Josh Dacos in defence, who was fantastic. He was one of their best. Jamie Elliott kicked 5 goals. Pendles had 31. Jeremy Howe down back was crazy. I thought they had real star power on the field, and it was just felt. We didn't really have anyone that was near those guys. I thought we had good players, but no one was even close to their best 4 or 5 or even 6 on ground. I thought if you go through the best 6 players on the field, I think it's all Collingwood by a comfortable margin, and then it gets closer from there. And I think if you're going up against a team who's got the best 6 players on the field by a comfortable distance, it's just going to be much harder to win a game of footy. And also, just touching on that, I thought that some of our best players in the team, or most mature or experienced, or the players that you expect to be playing well, I thought a few of them were below their best. And this is becoming a bit of a weird trend. It's not even the same players. It's not a form thing. I'm not listing the same blokes every week, because one of them is Nick Martin. I thought he was in and out of the game. I thought he was fantastic. I thought he was one of our best last week. And he had huge moments on ANZAC Day yesterday, but then there were patches where he just wasn't really impacting enough. Jade Gresham, look, I talked about him before the game. He's our 4th most experienced on the field, but he just wasn't up to it. I thought Cole Langford, coming back from injury, I thought he was good early, but only finished with the 10 touches. He gets a pass because it's his first game back, but Mason Redman, I think he might have had a fitness test before the game. I heard that somewhere. I think it was his 2nd or 3rd quarter. He was really tough at it in one of those terms, but there were some efforts he would just, he would like back. Even lesser important players, but role players like Harry Jones, were the conditions right for him to be played in? I didn't think it was as bad a call on the eye as I thought initially, but Jones did struggle a bit at times. And obviously, that rolled ankle won't help, so he's definitely someone who could be rested for next week's game. But there are guys, senior players who just continue, and it's not even the same senior players, but it's just in general, senior players continue to lower their colours a bit when others are lifting, and I think we haven't really seen Essendon at their very best for one whole game, which is a bit frustrating. And look, the mistakes, it's interesting, because I think they're so glaring against Collingwood because they were just unnaturally, clean for those conditions. They were going at over 70% in the wet, which is great. It's of course going to make us look worse, but also I did think Essendon adapted oddly. There was this overusage of hand passes at times. We kind of reverted to that spreading the field type of footy instead of just getting territory times 2. I thought we looked clearly better when it was drier, and then when it was pouring, it was the Pies who got the upper hand, and that's always been a bit of an issue with Essendon playing in the wet. And also our structure forward of the ball. I don't know if it was a breakdown in communication. I know there were issues with the comms in the box that were talked about, but I don't know. I feel like the commentators were talking about bringing a player deeper inside 50, and it's because we just couldn't get past Jeremy Howard forward of the ball, back of the ball, who was often unmarked behind the deepest forward. Credit to Collingwood for this. They did it against Brisbane. They really do make teams look a bit hopeless moving the footy. Brisbane looked lifeless in the game last week. They couldn't move the footy at all. And there were times where that was us. It looked like, mistakes, and you can credit a fair chunk of it to mistakes and not handling pressure in the wet. But also Collingwood are just an incredibly hard team to score against. This is the best team in the comp right now. There's no other way around it. And their greatest strength is their backline. And I think, in a weird way, it was pretty promising to see that we actually looked okay at times against their structure. We got, a few back-to-back goals. I think 4 goals in a row at one stage. There was 6 of 7 again. There were patches in that second and third. That gives me promise for the future, the way we played in those quarters. The fact that we could penetrate that Collingwood defence. The only issue is, though, we just couldn't maintain it. We're just not at the level of Collingwood. But yeah, let's continue the positivity, because I really liked the way our young players stepped up in this game. As I said, the third was very exciting when you had Caddy and Kako hitting the scoreboard, linking up together. But also Zach Reid, I thought he was just about our best on ground. That was fantastic. And every week, we're saying this every week, that was his best game for the club. I think that's the 3rd time we've said that he's played his best game for Essendon in 6 or 7 games this year. So that is fantastic that we're, not only just talking about him playing, but playing really good footy. Archie Roberts, I thought he made a few mistakes, but led us for disposals and gave it a real crack. And those guys, by the way, Caddy, Kako, Reid and Roberts, they're all playing their first ANZAC Day match ever. And they didn't disgrace themselves at all. Ben Hobbs is another one. I thought he was probably one of our better players. And I reckon if you go through the team, and maybe it's because we're a younger team, but there are probably more players that are, 23 to 24 age that could hold their head high than players closer to 30. And yeah, again, we are the second youngest team in the comp. Collingwood are the oldest team in the comp. It is something we have to talk about. I know some are angry at the result and whatnot, but again, this is just a complete, mismatch of teams and where they're at. Collingwood is a team challenging for a grand final. Essendon are a team who are essentially in a rebuild. We're going up against the flag favourites. I don't think the kids disgraced themselves at all. I actually thought they stood up and fought really hard for most of the game and just lost track with the Pies a bit. And even guys that aren't really part of our future but are filling in for the time being, Todd Goldstein, this guy did not expect to be playing this game, and I thought he ran out of legs a bit more than Cameron Late, but he battled really hard, and if he can keep that up, we're going to find it pretty easy to forget about, the losses of Draper and Bryan for the year. Look, I think it's hard to say if I'm more upset or happy with this game. It's hard to be glass half full or empty. But I think I'm probably more pleased with the way we looked in this game than in the West Coast game last week. I'm obviously not as pleased with the result, and obviously we didn't play. We weren't as clean as we were against West Coast because the conditions are completely different. But I'm never going to think back on that West Coast game ever again. I barely remember it now. But this game, this ANZAC Day, it gave us highlights. It proved that we have kids on our list who can match it with the best players in the comp, not only in the future but now. So they're going to get better. We were in it with a sniff until halfway through the last quarter too. And if you told me that we'd be under 3 goals down with 10 or so minutes left, I would have taken it. I will take that effort. Some will say that's complacency. I think there are just some games you don't really go in expecting to win. And here, unfortunately, we got a good look at two teams in different cycles of their footy lives. I know people, they want success and they want Essendon to win these games more. And I agree, I want that too. I get that. But you can't genuinely be mad at the boys for not getting the dub here. You can be mad at the lack of accountability late in the game. Heads were dropped. The floodgates opened. But I think for about maybe 80% of this game, we were going head-to-head with the best team in the comp and looking okay. I think 80% of the game, we were looking fine. We would have taken that. And just the other 20%, when we were a step or two behind, we just had no answers and looked, a bit lost. And that's going to be an interesting aspect of this season, because that was the same against Hawthorn. We let the Hawks out early and then were arguably controlling that game against them in round 1. Same with Collingwood. We let them out early, had to claw back late, and then just didn't have the energy to run out with them. So yeah, I think this year, although we're 3-3, percentage is bad, we have looked pretty good at times. And we've held it with the best, the very best. Not just Hawthorn, but Collingwood too now. And that's pleasing. I think if we'd got an absolutely smash like we did against the Crows, I'd be very worried. But the fact that we're holding it against the Pies, against the Hawks, we're beating the bad teams, I think we have to take that. North Melbourne's going to be interesting next week. But yeah, plenty to take away from this game. Not all of it bad. A bit of it bad, but not all of it. Let's get on to the votes. Alrighty, votes. Really tough week for it. Again, we didn't really have anyone near the best on field. If we had won, I don't even know. I think probably one of the Pies players would have got the ANZAC medal. I'm going to give one vote to Andy McGrath. He still has Bobby Hill in his pocket, in fact. The only time he came out was in the third when he kicked a random goal of the year contender. He had 7 touches at the end and 1 goal. For a Norm Smith medalist, while you have McGrath who's got 9 intercepts, 4 score involvements. So he was definitely one of our best. 2 votes to Sam Durham. I thought he let Dacos off the leash a little bit. Those two were on each other pretty solidly. A bit, but there was a period in that second quarter where I thought that Sam Durham was probably the most dangerous player on the field. But 3 votes, Zach Reid, and how good is it to say that? And I don't even think it's that unreasonable. I thought he was great. Mackay was playing that lockdown role on my check, keeping him down, which allowed Reid to really get his hands on the pill and intercept in the air. In wet too. Some of those marks he was taking he shouldn't have been taking, but 4 intercepts, 3 contested. 4 intercept marks, by the way, 9 intercept possessions, 4 spoils. He didn't lose a one-on-one all game. I thought he was great. And the role player, I'm going to give it to young Nate Caddy. I thought he made some horrendous mistakes, but I loved that he just kept trying. And he was actually leading us for score involvements. He was making things happen, kicked a couple, should have had more. It was an almost rising star worthy day. You felt, if some of those bad mistakes were, even him evening out or getting that goal or 2 extra, he probably gets the rising star nomination. But he doesn't. But that doesn't bother me. I love the way that he made those mistakes and bounced back, made up for them. In front of 90,000 screaming fans. Your first ANZAC Day game, I thought he looked at home. And it's probably the closest he's looked to a proper star for the future. Not saying he's won yet, but you can really start to see the potential there. But yeah, those are the votes. Some others unlucky. I thought Merritt was good. Ridley, Goldie, Roberts, Hobbs, probably someone else. But yeah, that's all. Cheers for watching. I leave your votes down in the comments below. Like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Thank you for putting up with a Felix who's been drinking all day, and go Bombers.